hardware. This research seeks to make the home, or any part of it, a kind of a physical sanitary that sustains residents and bringing them back to the essence, to that feeling of loving home within, to their refuge. Third goal is identifying the main strategies which may help reduce stress potential and provide a retreat from everyday duties and obligations by using indoor water features in the physical home environment. The research problem, although much research, supports the idea that natural elements may help alleviate stress and anxiety, but bringing nature into the home is problematic. There is a lack of research about the relationship between physical home spaces, stress, and indoor water features. About the research procedure, building a theoretical framework in the light of the main research hypothesis as presented first. Second, applications of the framework to selected interior home spaces images with various water features in order to test the validity of the hypothesis and eventually the extraction of the strategies based on the literature review and study survey. Finally, research findings, a set of recommendations, and future prospects are put forward. In order to propose and demonstrate a relationship between stress and nature, indoor water features, trying to provide an analytical framework for this study, we use three theoretical framework involves activity theory, attention restoration theory, arousal theory of stress, and biophilic design by Cohen, Kaplan, Nurse, and Madder. Restorative quality of the indoor water feature in home spaces. Feng Shui in Chinese is the famous and popular art of interior designing, primarily based on the flow of positive energy. Feng Shui encompasses the two key elements, water and wind. Water, which when placed in a right direction with consideration to Feng Shui, provide harmony, healthy, wealth, and prosperity to the individuals and the home that water is present in. Water features are an essential part of residential interior design because they create a calming, relaxing, and soothing feeling throughout the space. Here is a summary benefits of why there is a need for a water fountain other than its decorative function. First, as a source of relaxation, the universally appealing sounds of flowing water bring a peaceful quality to home. This calming effect actually increases productivity and creativity while reducing stress. Second, as a kinetic art form, an indoor water feature is aesthetically pleasing and dramatic, a centerpiece in any room. It is a dynamic way to bring interior spaces to life. Third, as an aid to cleaner, fresher air. Water produces negative ions, which naturally attract airborne particles such as pollutions and dust. The waterfalls acts like a magnetic to pull these particles out of air. Indoor water features and indoor fountains in landscape architecture and interior design is one or more items from a range of fountains, pools, ponds, cascades, waterfalls, and streams. So water feature can be any size, from a desktop water fountain to a large indoor waterfall that covers an entire wall in a large commercial building. We are not talking only about home. Water features could be anywhere in interior designs. Water feature can be made from any materials, including stone, marble, granite, stainless steel, copper, PVC, resin, and glass. There are many types of designs for indoor purpose. Some brand types include the following: freestanding floor fountains, wall-mounted water features, tabletop design, bubbling water panels, fountain furniture, architectural theme fountain, water sculptures, mist fountain, wall water features and logo wall fountains, and rain curtain water features. Others classify water features to simple basin fountains, soothing fountains, spotting fountains, cascading fountains, tide fountains, and Japanese fountains. Interior water feature could be simply classified either according to water effect, soothing, spotting, or according to the container configuration, or according to design. For the limitation of this study, water features simply classified for 4 basic types according to the container configuration, to the floor water features, wall-mounted indoor water features, and tabletop fountains and fountains furniture. The methodology, survey overview. A paper-based survey was conducted to elevate the stress potential of the physical home environment based on questions from the literature review. The objective of this survey was to identify the physical characters of interior spaces with indoor water features elements that people would perceive to be less stressful. The survey included 2 sets of instruments. One was the simulated home interior images set, and the other was a survey regarding the level of identified stress potential. Statistical analysis was performed to calculate stress potential and evaluate each home image. This was the pictures in the questionnaires. I just choose pictures for many spaces at home, main gathering spaces and kitchen, and fountains at patio or balcony, and corridor or near staircase. Others were in the bedroom, in the entrance, and in bath. Findings and conclusions. Findings from the survey study supports the theoretical framework indicating that using natural elements, indoor water feature, can reduce stress potential in the physical home environment. Participants received that using indoor water feature at patio or balcony cases may create a less stressful environment, while a fountain at main gathering spaces, such as reception, living room, or dining room, came second as a preferred location for a water feature, followed by kitchen and bathroom corridors, while bedrooms came the last. Participants noted while a discussion that natural water features, elements, and finishes may be more effective to attenuate stress levels than manufactured one. They preferred the natural one. And they perceived no difference in stress potential between actual natural material and fake natural look materials. At the light of the research, further applications and further research prospects were put forward. About the indoor water features for many buildings. In my research, I studied the indoor water features at home. I'm looking for indoor water features for many building types, focusing on way that indoor water feature can be used in health facility design to reduce stress and promote wellness, using the indoor water feature for reducing stress potential at work environment and heightening the task performance, explode the allure of water at shopping centers by using the fancy dancing water shows and indoor water features to make the best impact on customers that makes them not only want to stay there longer, but makes them want to come back also. Studying the multisensory effect of water features, because although perception of nature and water features is multisensory, involving responses to sound, smell, haptic contact with water, as well as visual contact. Research to data has been limited almost completely to influence of just viewing the water because of the limited research. That's all. Thank you.
I'm Bihter Almaç. I'm a research assistant in Istanbul Technical University, and I want to dedicate this presentation to all research assistants in Istanbul Technical University, because we are in the verge of getting fired from the university. Last Thursday, the directive council decided that 80 of us will be kicked out in November. So we are protesting it in Monday. You can come to our architecture faculty in the midday on Monday. Thank you. And my presentation will be about how house is abstracted into unlimited space by a complex framing device, which is called Fuki-Nuki Yatai. It's a Japanese word. This technique enables an abstraction through the narration by means of architectural elements, removed roof, beams, sliding panels, verandas, etc., and discusses the emphasis of multi-layered unlimited space, both spatial and temporal. I mainly discuss this framing device in a monumental work of Japanese literature, the Genji Monogatari. In Japanese scrolls, starting from 12th century, a certain method of complex depiction was used to unbound narrative space by blurring the distinction of interior and exterior. It can be said that depictions are in a process of investing the unlimited space and how to represent it. With this framing, in each image, more than one scene of the story can be depicted. Then each image would have more than one time. Also, the boundaries of spaces are blurred, so spaces are merged into one. By this, the viewer-reader is enabled to see the unseen. One of the most considerable works of this period is The Tale of Genji. The Tale of Genji is written by Murasaki Shikibu during Heian period, early in 11th century in Japan, and considered as a classical work in Japanese literature. It's a romantic novel, takes place in the Heian period, which mainly plots a certain character called Shining Genji and his love affairs. Lady Murasaki was a court lady during Heian period in Kyoto, which clearly explains the subject of the story. She was well-born, unusually well-educated and intelligent, but also she was a woman, so she was debarred from any sort of public career, from even the normal responsibilities that fell to her male associates. So she basically wrote about ceremonies, spectacles, pastimes, the creation and appreciation of beauty, and most of all, the nuances of romantic love. During the mid-12th century, the tale of Genji is illustrated into scrolls, which are called emaki. Emaki is the Japanese word which refers to the depicted scrolls of narration. It's a Japanese word again. The time difference between text and illustration, approximately 100 years, means that the viewer-readers are accustomed to the story. In Emaki, the relation of written and depicted narration reveals different aspects of expressing. Also emphasize the phenomenology of viewing and reading the Emaki. Although depicted scenes are relevant to the text, majority of illustrated narration reveals less and more of the story by creating subjective focuses. How to read the scrolls is a crucial point which marks the first encounter with the illustrations. Scrolls are opened from right to left, so the viewer-reader always begins to encounter the scene from right side of the scroll. The leftward direction of the scrolls design the arranging of each illustration. So if you want to look in illustrations, you have to first start from right and go to the left. Because the designers designed the arranging like that. So when we start with the illustrations, you have to follow that. It is assumed that scenes of the narration is extracted from the tale, and by arranging them, a new text was emerged. So the tale of Genji Scrolls are somehow an edited version, so the viewer-reader should first know the original text. Thus, the viewer-reader who is familiar to the story can only understand the multiple layers of depiction. Many illustrations take place in houses, mainly palaces. Here, the narration tends to depict an intricate inside and outside, so the house is abstracted as a concept for the many-layered, multi-time narration. The complex relations between texts and images frames an illustration in which multiple readings are embedded, therefore to explain all the story which takes place before the depicted scene, also the after. This idea of multiplied narration thus reveals alteration and abstraction of spaces. Fuki-Nuki Yatai creates a complex view similar to bird's eye view, explicitly places the reader-viewer to see and witness everything. The tale of Genji Scrolls cover many illustrations with different spatial descriptions, but the most unique technique could be considered as the Fuki-Nuki Yatai. Translated into English as, it could be translated into English as blown away roof technique, simply removes the roof and bears the beams to illustrate inside and outside as entangled as the narration. The basic function of Fuki-Nuki Yatai is to depict variation of time and spatial narrations merging into one scene by contrasting strictly drawn architectural elements and dynamical characters showing emotional states. Another reason why these illustrations are striking is the density of their depictions. The pictorial surface is usually 43 centimeters in the tale of Genji, while in other emaki, such as folk tales, usually would have illustrations more than 2 meters length. This complex framing device constitutes strict geometrical shapes. Even architectural beams are drawn by ruler. This density leads to complex ways of depiction in order to explain the scene and emotional states. And complexity eventually relates itself with architecture. Elements of architecture become symbols in Fuki-Nuki Yatai. The illustrations in this technique mainly create diagonals and floating surfaces in which characters are placed with larger scale, three-dimensional clothing and simple facial configuration. The faces of the figures are still with no emotions and depicted with hook for a nose, line for an eye method. Both women and men are in the clothes of Heian period, very voluminous, contrasting their mask-like faces. The only way to distinguish men and women is that women are depicted with many layered clothes as a Heian fashion and drawn as pear-shaped, men are drawn as apple-shaped. You could see on the left there is a man, and on the right are all women, if you can distinguish them. The characters are plainly depicted with a contrast to the settings. The complex framing device, by opening the roof, frames the overscaled figures inside the house without obscuring the illustration. Although abstract faces of the characters lack expression, the overall setting and geometrical spatial elements express the emotional states of characters. The house is abstracted to create narrative metaphors. How the flattened surfaces and architectural elements create this effect will be investigated. Architecture and landscape are used as visual metaphors for their emotions. This device creates many contrasts to reveal the narrative conflicts, emotional states, and many layered events. The first effect of the diagonals will be limitless interiors. To begin with, Fuki-Nuki Yatai creates an abstract environment, which is neither two-dimensional nor three-dimensional. The narrative space is abstracted here as the narration entangles with illustrations by Fuki-Nuki Yatai. The house becomes limitless, is unbounded from the setting, and creates new environments for many depths which are although two-dimensional. Scenes object the three-dimensional emphasis. Instead, scenes are depicted with a flat surface embedded in a nervous setting, thus to reveal a dynamic and dramatic event. The oblique setting, abstracted figures and environment, RV configurations of architectural elements are constructing one layer above another to create a multiplicity. In Emaki, this unmentioned space as the many layers of time and space, therefore it is crucial to examine the spatial configurations. By Fuki-Nuki Yatai, diagonals are used to divide the scene, therefore to create spaces of interior. Although these diagonals give the depiction its two-dimensional aspect, diagonals as an instrument used as a threshold of third dimension. The important point is that how Fuki-Nuki Yatai frames the space, because although narrative text refers to the characters in the story, the space is omitted. It is impossible to narrate the space completely. Meanwhile, the architectural space, in this case house, also embedded within. While the diagonals and the angle of the view flatten the house interior, sliding panels or architectural elements draw forth the third dimension. This effect of diagonals named as the duality of their role, because diagonals both give the depth of three dimension by constituting voluminous architectural elements and arranged figures, meanwhile stricken it with strict flatness of surfaces, which creates a contrast of individualized image and impersonal surface. This duality creates spatial limits of flattened surfaces, yet inside the surfaces many depths are unbounded. With each depiction, interiors unbound their limits and the house exceeds its boundaries. This obliquity amplifies the character's inner states of ambiguity. I will continue with the examples. This is the second illustration of Untitled Chapter in the Tale of Genji. This scene is about an autumn evening when Kaoru, Genji's adopted son. I have to explain more about the story. The Genji is not one person. After he dies, the son of him continues with the adventure. So there are lots of people who are like Genji and lots of women. This scene is about an autumn evening when Kaoru, Genji's adopted son, visits Ukifune and unexpectedly, who has hidden in a small house. This is where Ukifune hides herself from another nobleman, Prince Nyo, who has terrified Ukifune by his attempts of love. Meanwhile, Kaoru wants to attract her to himself by giving her a poem and now waiting for an answer. It's a typical love story. So, this scene depicts this tense state of elevated moment where characters are in a kind of isolation, deep thinking about their emotions. Initially, there could be three narrative spaces. First, interior where ladies in waiting and Ukifune stay. Second, the veranda where Kaoru waits, and the third, which is related to the second narrative space, the garden with weeds. Assuming the reader-viewer opens the scroll from right to left, the garden with weeds can be seen firstly. Kaoru emerges in the middle, and later Ukifune and ladies in waiting appear. Weeds are a powerful symbol here. They give the hint of a secret hidden house, because weeds can be seen in gardens of unattended houses. This simply indicates that Kaoru catches Ukifune. Obviously, she is somewhere hidden. He is the largest figure and placed higher than other figures, also isolated from interior. He is on the verge of receding from the unattended environment into the house. Kaoru leans in the veranda with a fan, and below him a half of an umbrella can be seen, a symbol of autumn rains. The emotional threshold is perfectly arranged by placing him in veranda, not connected to the outside, yet he is not inside. On the left, interior is depicted by removing the roof and the fourth wall. Inside 5 women are arranged close together, and Ukifune, leaning on her face, among others, has a smaller scale. She is on the tatami mat in the most left. Maybe you cannot distinguish her because she has only her black hair. She is on a tatami, which is clearly depicted with dark lines, a symbol of the feelings that she cannot express. All women around her are somehow connected to her, yet she is alone in her thought. Here, the beam in the middle creates the diagonal frame. Also, it is cut off to reveal the interior. This, in fact, compresses the interior. Diagonal is formed with an angle of 48 degrees, which resembles the exciting, suspended moment and shows figures as floating on the surface rather than living in it. By high-angle diagonal, the interior is compressed. No beam or sliding panel show their edges or end. The house is as if expanding continuously, without boundaries. In this expansion of surfaces, Kaoru leans isolated, with his robe three-dimensionally depicted. Ukifune, on the other hand, compressed inside, even restrained with tatami borders, and almost two-dimensional. Illustration hides the figures behind sliding doors that give the feeling of 3 dimension, yet background and larger scale of figures flatten the illustration. For a while, closing of the figures and illustrations on wooden panels depicted with many depths. The faces of the figures or the angles which whole interior depicted gives a more flat feeling. All the dimensional back and forth explicitly abstracts the house into an unlimited with many scale and many times space. In this illustration, unlimited space is used to symbolize